Okay, so where was I even at? So we know that it's due to external competition from overseas rival, and SBL is now facing a series. You see, SBL is now facing a series of markets that is stagnant or in decline. You know, so they are getting into that phase where they are becoming stagnant. They are becoming stagnant. You know, it's very, very important to understand. So how do you move a company that is in that state, you know, back to growth? You know, back to growth. It says, while SBL is still profitable due to substantial market shares, it is unreasonable to expect the situation to continue indefinitely. So one of the things to note here is that management has realized that, or the directors have realized that they need to act proactively. They need to act proactively. This is proactive leadership, where they realize that even though that their profit is quite okay due to the fact that they have a substantial amount of market share, you know, they don't think this is going to continue in the near future. In the near future. Now, it says zero growth is forecast in the SBL current market for the next 4 years due to overseas rival aggressive market penetration in Ghana and West Africa. In Ghana and in West Africa. So zero growth, right? Zero growth has been forecast. Now, anytime you see a forecast, one of the things you would want to ask yourself is, what are the assumptions going into this forecast? You know, every forecast has assumptions. You know, every forecast has assumptions. I think in last sitting's exam, you know, they had something like that where, you know, they detailed out the assumptions. But you want to understand how they came up with this 0% growth, right? Because it's been forecast for the next 4 years. And it's because of this rival aggressive market penetration in Ghana and West Africa, which is coming from overseas. So you're having people come from, you know, other countries into Ghana, and it's posing a lot of competition. It's posing a lot of competition. So which model comes to mind when it comes to this level of competition? Which model comes to mind? Please let's make this interactive, okay? I mean, I can go through all of it without asking any questions. Which models come to mind when you are talking about competition and all of that? Okay, looks like people don't want to talk today. I don't know why. So let me just go through.
Is it the 5 forces?
Yes, the 5 forces, you know, the 5 forces. It looks like there is a huge opportunity in the Ghanaian environment. So it's making overseas rivals come into that market, you know, to make some money. How many of you remember the whole space to space? You know, when space to space started like this, or telecommunication centers, when it started, and everyone saw that there's money in almost every Ghanaian was doing that business. So it signifies that, oh, there's some form of opportunity. And so it's making these overseas rivals penetrate the Ghana market because they are seeing some form of opportunity. But it's making things very, very difficult for SBL. And now they are, you know, they are projecting a zero growth in terms of, I think, profits.
In 2020, the anti-infectant blah blah is this. The recent achievement of 84% is okay. So now let's look at revenue figures for, okay, so let's see.
Hey.
So 15, 35, okay. So
can you anyway, so sorry for that break. So you have zero, so it says zero growth is forecast in SBL current market for the next 4 years. So like I said, anytime you see a forecast, think about the assumptions, you know, what is going into the forecast and why they are projecting zero growth. Next paragraph, it says, over the last 10 years, SBL has established itself as the market leader in manufacturing, retailing, and wholesale distribution. But this has been hard work. The export has a lot of choices and strong market bargaining power. Margins are reasonable for the export division with growth potential, but struggling to compete with the new entrant rivals. So in the moment I saw divisions, you know, right now they are looking at the performance of the divisions. The performance of the divisions. And it is possible a question might come around divisional performance. You know, that's why they threw something in around transfer pricing. I mean, when we get to the questions and the model side of things, I'll definitely raise them, but this is something to take note of. They are telling us that margins are reasonable for the export division with growth potential, but struggling to compete. So on a divisional level, right, on a divisional level, you can assess the performance of each division and see where the leakage is coming from. You know, you can try and assess the performance of each division. It says for the export division, margins are reasonable. Margins are reasonable, but the only problem is that they are struggling to compete with the new entrant rival. So Porter's 5 forces definitely is something you should know going into the exams. It's a model, it's a must-know model going to the exam. This sector is encouraging, but the business model is not supporting leveraging the potential for growth, since only 6% of the staff effort is directed towards this part of the business. You know, so again, what do we see here? What does this statement mean to you? It says this sector is encouraging, but the business model is not supporting leveraging the potential for growth, since only 6% of the staff effort is directed towards this part of the business. What does this mean? Okay, so you remember that when we are going through the case yesterday, one of the things that I pointed out was the distribution of the staff, which I didn't talk too much about. So if you remember, we said SBL is made up of 3 divisions: manufacturing, retail and wholesale distribution, and exports. All SBL staff are trained to put the customer's needs first. SBL has a staff strength of 500, with 54% in the manufacturing division and the remaining 46% in the other division. So one of the things I questioned here is the staff distribution right? The number of people working in manufacturing versus the number of people working in retail and wholesale distribution and exports. Is that a good balance? You know, is that a good balance? Because you'd want that good depending on the work that is in the division, you would want to align your staff numbers to the work that is available. It's very, very important. So we see here, if you scroll down, we see here that that is exactly what the market report is telling us about, right? The market report is telling us that it says this sector is encouraging, but the business model is not supporting leveraging the potential for growth, since only 6% of the staff effort is directed towards this part of the business. So we have only 6% of staff focused on this division, a division that has a lot of growth potential. So there's some misalignments there, right? A division, if you want that part of your business to really grow, then you need to, increase the staff numbers and increase the quality of staff that oversee that division or that handle that division. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it says manufacturing is still causing major problems due to price competition from overseas rivals, making SBL a small fish in a big pond. So another way of saying a fragmented market is a small fish in a big pond where you have a lot of small fishes. No one has dominance over the market, or no one can significantly influence the market in a single direction. You have a number of companies or pharmaceutical companies who own just a fragment of the market share and are not necessarily dominating the market. It's very, very important. So what do we learn from this market position report? What do we learn from it? We learn the nature of the market, which is very, very key. What kind of market is this? What kind of market is this? Now, if you've done case studies over and over, if you look at pre-C materials over and over, you can tell, you can predict what kind of questions will come. We are being told of the nature of the market here. Then, once we are told the nature of the market, which is fragmented, immediately I knew that it was probably most likely due to external competition. Now, when I think of competition, then I'm thinking of what kind of models are around competition, what kind of models are around competition. So that's one thing we note there. So SBL should be thinking about how they would be making themselves, giving themselves an edge over their competitors in this market. Second thing we note here is divisional performance, right? The performance of the divisions. So some divisions have potential, other divisions too are struggling, right? Now you cannot look at divisions, you cannot look at divisions just independently or on its own. You look at the division in relation to the staff that are working in it. So for example, right? If you have a business, right? You look at the kind of work that is available, then you assign your human resources to that kind of work. Now, if an area or a division has a lot more potential and you're assigning only 6% of your staff efforts, you are not really taking advantage of the potential that you could harness in the future. And so some realignment of staff would be necessary, or even some form of recruitment will be necessary to fully take advantage of that division performance. Another thing that comes to mind, which is the last thing in the market report, is because I'm seeing divisional performance, I won't be surprised if they throw questions around, this. So how is this division performing? Which division is contributing to the decline in profits, and why is it so? Should they shut down a division, right? Should they shut down a division? For example, if exports is, draining them in terms of profits, do they have to cut back on exports a little bit? If it's manufacturing, do they have to, what kind of changes do they have to make in order to, ensure that their manufacturing profits do not, go in the decline? Very, very important. At the beginning, I mentioned that when you are starting a business and you are going to scale into other parts of the world, you must make sure you are not scaling too fast or you are not expanding too fast. Otherwise, it's possible that it might catch up with you. If you are scaling too fast and you do not have the necessary human resource to drive that expansion, that's when you have problems like this. I hope it makes sense. Okay. Okay, so let's look at competitor analysis. I don't know if Melody is back. If Melody is back, she can read for us.
Okay. Competitor analysis. Key companies to watch. So we are looking at Yellow PLC. Yellow PLC is the second largest local manufacturer in the private sector and the second largest supplier to the public sector in West Africa. It is among the few companies to supply a wide range of generic antiretrovirals, including the triple therapy combination, to the public sector through a highly competitive tender system. Besides operating in sub-Saharan Africa, the company has more recently ventured into the Indian market for an alternative supply source of cheaper generic drugs and expanding its geographic footprint.
Okay, so one of the things you need to note when you are doing competitor analysis, because you are doing competitor analysis, you are looking at yourself in relation to your competitors. You are analyzing your situation in relation to your competitors. So, which all of these things I'll send to you later. So one of the things you look at is, what are the strengths of your competitor? What are the things that they have that you don't have? What are the things that they have that you don't have? And what is if they have an area of focus, what is their area of focus? What is their area of focus? Then you also look at their weaknesses. If you are being told any weaknesses, you also look at their weaknesses. So that's how you try and assess you do your competitor analysis. You look at what they do better than you and what you do better than them. It's very, very important. Now, one of the things I would note with this competitor is that it says, besides operating in sub-Saharan Africa, right, the company has more recently ventured into the Indian market for an alternative supply source of cheaper generic drugs, cheaper generic drugs. So it seems that affordability is very, very huge. Affordability is very, very huge. And this company has had to go, all the whole extent of going into the Indian market to get this kind of cheap drugs, So it shows you how much, if you really, really want to compete and be successful in this market, you need to find a supplier who you can rely on and who is cheap. It's very, very important. It's very, very important. So, like I said, when you're looking at a competitor, you look at their strengths, their weaknesses, and what you can learn from them. Okay, let's move on to green.
Okay, Green PLC. Green PLC, one of the leading pharmaceutical companies in China, is one of the leading exporters of generics to West Africa. The company's product range includes vitamins, antibiotics, analgesics, cardiovascular, respiratory, and cerebrovascular medicine. The company focuses primarily on the public sector and has recently won several tenders in teaching hospitals in Ghana.
Okay. So you see, for Green PLC, again, for Green PLC, that's one of the things you saw with Yellow PLC. Yellow PLC, what they do is they supply to the public sector in West Africa, but we'll come to that later. Green PLC as well, they are one of the best in China, right? They are one of the best in China, and they also focus primarily on the public sector, right? So we would want to know, like I said, the strengths the weaknesses, what they are even focusing on, and what we can learn from them. SBL started with over-the-counter drugs, right? Over-the-counter drugs. I don't think we've been told yet whether they are focusing on public sector organizations or private sector organizations or just normal individuals. No, but we are learning from here. We do not know if there's some form of opportunity in the public sector, because in the public sector, it's based on, how do you call it? Like it's like people, like a public sector comes to you, and a public sector organization comes to you and comes to buy from you an amount of drugs, and they pay you your money. You do not necessarily have to deal with individual customers and all of that. So they've been able to, for Green PLC, they've been able to win several tenders in teaching hospitals, So that's a smart way of, trying to get your products out there, because the individuals who are sick, right, they go to the hospital, rather than just setting up pharmacies waiting for the customer to come to you. They have gone to the hospital. They know that the customers will go to the hospital. So they have gone to the hospital with their drugs, and they've been able to win several tenders in teaching hospitals. This is probably something that SBL can learn from. Again, when you're looking at competitor analysis, you look at the strengths, weaknesses, what they focus on, and what you can learn from them. It's very, very important. And some of these things that I'm mentioning, these are things that, in case they ask you a question on what are some of the things you can recommend, to improve the lot of SBL, you can look at what the competitor is doing well, and tailor it to SBL circumstances. I hope that makes sense. Okay,
Yes,
Caleb asked a question.
Okay, so can we look at it from this point? We realize that when we're reading yellow
PLC.
Yellow PLC, thank you very much. We realized that the name was associated with a particular drug, which was the antiretroviral drugs. So can you say that as a result of they niching towards that particular drug, their name is more or less associated with that drug. So any other drugs that come to the system, they believe that, okay, since it's from these people and they have quality antiretroviral drugs, there are other generic drugs will be more or less like will be beneficial. And for Green PLC, they're going into the teaching hospital because the teaching hospital will more or less like purchase in bulk, let's say in very huge numbers. It's also more or less like a way that SBL can also look at it.
So, yeah, so I think that was what I was trying to explain. Maybe I probably didn't explain it properly. But what I was trying to say is the first part, your yellow PLC explanation that I didn't get too well. So if you could repeat that. The Green PLC, if you look at these two competitors, you see that they have a focus or they have a target, right? They have a target. So their target, they are looking at the public, for yellow PLC, they are looking at the public sector, and they have a certain range of products. I always mentioned, the 4 Ps. Don't forget the 4 Ps. They have a certain range of products, right? And they have a target. You have Green too as well. Similar approach or similar strategy. But Caleb, I didn't get your point on the yellow. You're saying the yellow, the name has an association with what they are providing?
Yes, because they specifically mentioned generic antiretroviral drugs. Mm-hmm. So they said, so it's like when you see an antiretroviral drug, you say, oh, that's from yellow PLC, because it's more or less like the name associated with it. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, but there could be other.
Oh yes, there could be other, but as long as the name has been mentioned, it should more or less like ring a bell or something.
So what you are saying is that because they seem to be like one of the dominant
suppliers in ARVs. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's quite, evident too that there are few. It says it's among the few companies. So there are also other companies. Maybe there are few, maybe one or two or three, who are supplying generic antiretrovirals. But that's a good point, because sometimes you associate a drug with the name of the company. The name of the company. So yeah, that's a good point. But what we need to note here is that it is among the few companies. So there are probably other companies that are supplying the same antiretrovirals. One of the things I would want to look at is which calibrate, which is a good point, is the product focus. What are they focusing on? What are they focusing on? The targets. If you look at yellow and green, they all seem to have a target, their focus. They are not just doing haphazardly. Okay, let's move on to red.
Okay. Red Limited, a subsidiary of Health Professional PLC, is one of the leading pharmaceutical distributors in Nigeria, handling about 30% of pharmaceuticals sold and distributed across the country. Entering Ghana a couple of years ago, Red Limited is growing steadily in the Ghanaian pharmaceutical industry. Given the recently formed alliance with Booster Logistics in June 2020, the company plans to expand its coverage and further strengthen its distribution network.
Okay, very, very interested. Have you guys, if you guys have gone through the past questions, which I've said, countless number of times, one of the things you realize is that in one of the past questions, they talked about alliances, but we'll come to that. We'll come to that. So just hold that thought in your mind, because they've asked the question around alliances, strategic alliances. What are the benefits of that? It's one of the past questions. So here you are being told that Red Limited is one of the leading pharmaceutical distributors in Nigeria, handling about 30% of pharmaceuticals sold and distributed across. So it seems to be a major player in Nigeria. It seems to be a major player in Nigeria, right? But one of the things that we need to know here is that it has recently formed an alliance with Booster Logistics. Now, who do you think Booster Logistics is? What kind of business do you think they are into? Why do you think they formed an alliance with them?
They can be into distribution.
Yes. So
they can help in their...
Yeah, go ahead.
So they can help with the distribution of their products, or be their middleman or their agent to distribute their products.
Okay. So Booster Logistics has, they formed an alliance with them so that they can help their expansion efforts. Now, as we all see, this is also a way of expanding. If this is also a way of expanding, you can literally form an alliance with somebody else who would help you to reach several markets, because that's their specialization. Their specialization is distribution, expansion, logistics, right? That's their specialization. So, is this something that SBL should be thinking about, right? Do you find it necessary that you could form an alliance? These are questions that you ask. They could form an alliance with, a logistics company or a distribution company in order to expand, their efforts in other countries. especially when we are told that only 6% of their staff has been, assigned to the exports division. So do they need an alliance with Boaster, not Boaster Logistics, but with some logistics company to assist their efforts in that regard? These are, like I said, when you look at a competitor, you look at their focus, their strengths, their weaknesses, and what you can learn from them. Very, very important. Very, very important. Okay. Now, we realized that another thing I needed to note is that you realize that two of the competitors that have been listed here, two of the competitors, they have a name in another country of the world, right? One of them, China. This one, Green PLC, for example, is one of the leading pharmaceutical companies in China. Then you also have Red, which is it's one of the leading pharmaceutical distributors in Nigeria. So one of the things that comes to mind is that because this name, this Red brand, might be known in Nigeria, right? Sometimes when something is known in a certain area, when it comes down to Ghana, especially looking at the whole Ghana, Nigeria, ECOWAS, dynamic, it might be easier, to assimilate their products. So that's just something to think about. But the main thing here is the alliance with the logistics company. Very, very important. Now let's move on to the favorite part, which a lot of people might be looking into now. SBL's financial statements. Before that, any questions? Any questions? If you have questions, please ask. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get everyone to be able to understand the case, the precinct proper, even before I present my notes and my slide and all of that.
Okay, so there's more or less like a suggestion.
Sorry, okay.
Yes, looking at Red Company and their strategic alliance with Booster Logistics Limited, can SBL also look at it so that they can reduce the burden on the retail, their retail chain, so that it's more or less like all the stores or all the brick and mortar retail chain they have, they can use it to more or less like reduce that cost to help increase.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that, okay, it's good that you mentioned it, right? Your partnership with a distribution company, helps you to, for example, it will help your efforts or it will help save you some time and some investments when it comes to your export side and your retail and wholesale side, But there are pros and cons to working with a distribution company, right? I hope you're all aware. There are pros and cons. It's just like what we've learned in our strategy. Pros and cons of what? Outsourcing. That's what should come to mind. Pros and cons of outsourcing. There are pros and cons to, working with a distribution or outsourcing, a part. So if SBL decides to outsource that distribution arm to, for example, Booster or somebody else, what are the pros and cons? It's just like what we do when you are doing the kind of analysis you do when you are doing a lease or buy decision. Something similar. So if you outsource, what are the benefits to you? If you do it in-house, what are the benefits to you? So Calabia is saying that I could save you some operational costs with looking at your retail and wholesale distribution, as well as your export side of things as well. Yeah, it's possible. These are all possibilities. Any other questions or suggestion, contribution? Okay. It looks like there are no questions. So let's move on to the financial statement.
Sir.
Yes.
I also noticed that the same manufacturing department or division, they're also in charge of the distribution as well. So I think if they are able to outsource or have an alliance with another distribution, maybe channel or company, they will free up some of the staff from that division and then reallocate them to the other divisions that are lacking the staff effort.
Exactly. So these are all the reason why I don't want to make any hard and fast conclusions now is we are still going through the case and the numbers will show us something. So you would want, the reason why we outsource is you want the company to focus on its core business. There are other things that the company can give to someone else so that, you don't have to, spend a lot of man hours doing that, So it's a consideration that the company, SBL must, think about, will it be wise to do that? Like I said, when you look at your competitors, you try to find out what they are doing, what you can learn from it. So yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, let's move on to